Hello and welcome to another MovieBoozer.com virtual pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and I'm joined by Bill Leon.
Hi. Hi.
And Hawk Ripchaw.
Hi.
I saw a film earlier today called Angel Heart by Alan Parker, the director of The Wall, and it starred Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro. Have you seen this film, Ken?
I have not, but isn't that the one where like Robert De Niro, isn't there like a kid's heart or
No. But you should see it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It kind of like it pulls like a fucking who wrote The Long Goodbye? What's that author's name? That noir detective author.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
The name's avoiding. Yeah, I can't remember it.
You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
This was structured like that, but it takes like a horror movie type of twist, and it was good. I recommend it. I definitely think both of you guys would appreciate this film. It's very good. Very young Mickey Rourke. I would say almost unrecognizable based on, all the plastic surgery he's had over the years and putting on weight and getting buff and all that. I just remember thinking like, wow, I've never seen Mickey Rourke look like this in my entire life.
Interesting.
Movie that I keep seeing but never actually watch.
It was a good movie. I think both of you guys would appreciate it. It's sort of like a detective noir, and then it takes this like horror twist.
You know what Mickey Rourke looks like in that movie? David Thewlis.
He sounds like Bruce Willis. He sounds like a young Bruce Willis, like when he talks and stuff. So I immediately, like, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking like, did he get like all this plastic surgery done in his face just to differentiate himself from Bruce Willis?
I hate Bruce Willis. Look different, sound different.
It's possible. It's very possible.
Okay, so I when you mentioned the name of the movie, it made me think, because there was a movie that entered my mind, and I was trying to figure out what it was.
Not the same movie.
Yeah, no, completely different movie.
Okay.
And I'm looking through it, and for the life of me, I can't figure out what the hell I was thinking about when you mentioned it.
This was a good movie. Put it on your to-do list. I think both of you guys would definitely appreciate it as a whole,
Okay, fair enough.
It's a solid film, and this is actually only the second Alan Parker film I've ever seen, because the only Alan Parker film I'm familiar with is The Wall. So it was interesting. I'm glad I watched it. But anyway, we have a lot of new release films to talk about.
Yes. So first of all, I saw Tag.
I did not see Tag because, given how often I saw movies and how at every single one of them the Tag trailer played, and it was the same trailer, the trailer beat me into submission into not wanting to see the movie at all.
There's this really obscure tiny joke in BoJack Horseman where Todd and Mr. Peanut Butter are trying to get a movie called Tag off the ground, and the BoJack Horseman subreddit has been lit with people posting like the screenshot of Todd holding the Tag poster, and they're like, "Oh, they stole BoJack's idea."
Well, it's not. They didn't steal BoJack's idea, but Ken, we know this is based on a true story, which I'm pretty familiar with. But tell us about the movie.
Okay, so Tag, yeah, it is. It's based very, very incredibly loosely on a true story. Mm-hmm. Really, the only thing that is true is the fact that this took place in the Spokane, Washington area, and there was a group of people who decided they were going to play tag, and they're like grown-ass men.
Well, several of the tag scenarios are actually factual as well.
Yeah, a few of the actual things you see, like in the movie, are based on things they actually did. And in fact, the movie just before, like, while the credits are rolling, it actually shows video that this group has actually filmed of themselves, and they do crazy shit like busting in on a dude while he's showering to tag him.
Right.
Oh, so So these people actually do crazy stuff. Now the thing is, though, when I say crazy stuff, they do some crazy stuff, but this movie amps that up to 11 in a way that is
obnoxious.
Well, here's the thing. At first, I found it entertaining, and then they push the boundary just a bit too far, and then they keep pushing it after it's too far. And so there was a point at which the movie just turned into a fucking cartoon. Now that said, there were still laughs to be had. I found myself laughing through a good amount of this movie. Cheap laughs. The physical comedy is, the laughs are mostly cheap. They're, man falls down and goes boom kind of jokes. And these are, of course, when I say cartoonish, there are many instances in which a person gets hurt in this film when they really should have just broken every bone in their body. Just some painful hits.
Are you trying to segue into the hot topic on this movie?
Oh, what's the hot topic?
Are you talking about the twist?
No, the fact that Jeremy Renner fell down and didn't break every bone in his body, but every bone in his arm and his other arm.
Well, actually, believe it or not, I went into that movie knowing full well that Jeremy Renner actually had his arm CG'd through most of the film because of that. I really didn't notice too much.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, in fact, I don't think I ever noticed at all. I mean, granted, the movie did catch my interest enough that I wasn't really paying attention after a while.
Okay.
Plus, the way they shoot him, honestly, I didn't really notice. So this is how it works. Jeremy Renner is one of a group of friends who play tag every year during the month of May. And Jeremy Renner is sort of a outlier in his group because he's the only person. He's basically like the god of tag because he has never ever been tagged in any game that they've ever played, which is kind of a bullshit thing that they made up for this movie. Honestly, I think they didn't have to do that. Never been. That's hard to believe.
Who do we cast as our golden boy? We can't get Chris Evans. He's too busy. Hawkeye. And don't get me wrong, that's not a slight against Jeremy Renner. I think Jeremy Renner is so great and he should be used so much more in movies because
Renner's fine in this. I mean, honestly, the thing that's kind of funny is they kind of treat him like he's the Terminator of tag. There are these sequences where people are trying to tag him, and he goes into like a Sherlock Holmes, Guy Ritchie mode where he's analyzing everything mathematically that's happening around him to figure out how to avoid being tagged. And it was kind of a funny conceit. Really, the highlight of this movie, though, is not Renner. It's actually you have John Hamm, Ed Helms, Jake Johnson, and Hannibal Buress as sort of the four friends who are playing the game together. And they've decided to try to gang up on Renner to finally tag him for the first time. I would say the first 2/3 of this movie are very funny, and then the movie makes this twist towards the end, a very self-serious twist that almost makes you wonder, did they realize that this was gonna just make the entire rest of the movie depressing as shit? And it's so the movie becomes ultra cartoonish, and then suddenly they throw cancer into the mix.
I had guessed that cancer would be involved.
Yeah, you guessed it, but you guessed wrong because you guessed that it was going to be you guessed the wrong person.
Right.
So I'm not going to give away who it is, but they throw it into the mix, and it really felt like just third act injection of drama for no apparent reason. I give this movie a minor recommendation, but not to see in theaters. I would say this is a Netflix streaming day. I got, the parents are over and they're looking for something dumb that we can put on in the background while we talk.
You're saying it's safe for elderly people.
See, while it's definitely a rated R movie, it's the kind of rated R movie that's safe to watch with your parents because it's less about sex and more about just dumbasses doing goofy, slapsticky stuff and occasionally cursing.
Has anyone in the production come out and said, like, oh, the studio kind of forced us to make this more family friendly? Because really, like, what I get from the trailers,
it's pretty rated R. I mean, as far as like the dialogue, they really push that. And yeah, so no, I don't think there's a push to make the movie family friendly. But yeah, it's you know what, I call it like family. I call it it's family friendly in the same way that watching like Mel Brooks movies is family friendly in that it does some pretty, you know, there is some pretty edgy stuff in it, but it's not edgy in a way that will make people think that you're a monster for watching it. You know, it's not it's like introducing your parents to Hereditary may not be the smartest move, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that's a different kind of edgy. I don't really have that much else to say about the movie. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I do have one more thing that I want to throw in here. The one person who really does bring this movie around in a kind of a hilarious way for me is Isla Fisher, who plays Ed Helms' wife. So in the world of tag, the rules that they've made is it's boys only. So even as adults, it's like women aren't allowed to participate. Isla Fisher though is portrayed as being like you know how sometimes in sports movies you'll have like the wife who's like super into the sport, like even more into it than the dudes. Well, she is more into tag than anyone playing tag, to the point where it's like she's almost dangerous. She instigates shit in violent ways. And
have you watched the TV show The League, Ken? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen some episodes.
From like season 2 on, the character Kevin's wife gets involved. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same thing. Like she's really got a knack for fantasy football, and she's kicking out the.
Doesn't have a knack. She's a fucking monster.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. It's very much like that, where like these guys are into tag, but she is fucking into tag, like in a scary way, and that her character really made me enjoy the movie a lot. It's a mixed bag of a movie. There's a lot that doesn't work. That last act is really not worth your time, but it has enough to enjoy about it, and a lot of the comedic set pieces worked, that I just give it a modest streaming recommendation.
All right.
Okay, so both of us, Hawk, you and myself, we saw Superfly.
Yeah, I didn't have much of an interest in Superfly until I saw the second trailer, where I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be dumb. And I was right, but in kind of like the best way, because not only was it dumb, it knew exactly what kind of dumb it was supposed to be, and this movie is all right.
Yeah, it's an all right movie. I'll say that.
And when I say all right, I had a blast.
I enjoyed the movie while it was on. Definitely. Here's what I'll say about Superfly. You still have not seen the original, correct?
I saw part of the original.
You saw part of the original. How much of a part are you referring to?
First half hour.
Okay.
I've only listened to the soundtrack to the original.
Well, the soundtrack is the highlight. The soundtrack to Superfly by Curtis Mayfield,
one of the best funk records ever made,
and I would argue one of the best records ever made.
Yeah,
not just funk. It is.
But I'm saying when you talk about like great funk records, usually that comes up in the conversation.
Absolutely. And it's all due to Mayfield and his songwriting. And the thing about Mayfield is he could write a really catchy tune, but he also made it mean something. And there's a lot of social commentary in his writing. And what's interesting is he even makes like the album, if you listen to it, it kind of comments on the movie lyrically, but it does, you don't have to have seen the movie to appreciate it.
Yeah, I've never watched, I haven't watched the film, but being somebody that does sort of learn about 70s culture secondhand, it is, like I get that from the record. It is sort of like the lyrical elements of like running drugs on the street and that kind of thing that pop up throughout that record.
Yeah. To put this in perspective, I just pulled up the Wikipedia page, and it has like all of the critics' scores for the album. The All Music Guide gives it 5 stars. Los Angeles Times gives it 4 out of 4 stars. Q Magazine gave it 5 stars out of 5. Rolling Stone gave it 5 out of 5. Sputnik Music, whatever the hell that is, says 4 out of 5. And Billboard, favorable.
I think Ken, I think you and I have. I did watch the film Superfly, but like years ago, and I really don't. It didn't stick with me. It's not something that I remember fondly.
So the movie, the Superfly, I think is a perfectly entertaining blaxploitation film from its era. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it has some creative things in it that work really well. Particularly what it's probably most famous for is about midway through the film, there is a lengthy montage sequence that's done entirely using still frames, and it's kind of a neat little sequence. Overall, though, it's not a movie that's aged particularly well. Of course, then blaxploitation films in general feel archaic, but this movie, the new Superfly,
I loved it. I'm going to be honest.
Here's what it does right. It captures the basic spirit of the original film, but it modernizes it in a very interesting way. You see, the original, the spirit of the original Superfly was simply about a gangster who, a drug dealer, a gangster who he's reached the point when he just wants out, and he wants to live he wants to live his life with, on the money that he gets from one last score. And the Superfly is sort of a positive story, because it's about a guy who's trying to get out of crime and to live his life as best as he can and get one up on the man. And that's exactly what the new movie is about. It's about getting one up on the man and moving on with your life and getting out of a life of crime.
Right. And that's not even what really enticed me to it. It's all of the flavor of the movie. It's directed by Director X, who this is his debut feature, and until now he's been a very acclaimed director of rap music videos from like Jay-Z, Beyonce, Usher, all kinds of.
What is his work? Can you give me some music video credits?
He did from Usher, I think. Off the top of my head, I can't pull a lot of the titles off because I just kind of skimmed over it.
I was just curious.
I've got a few. Rihanna featuring Drake, Work. That was one he did.
I don't think I saw that video. I heard that song
Hotline Bling with Drake.
Hotline Bling is okay. That's got some visual flair to it.
Iggy Azalea featuring Jennifer Hudson, Trouble. I'm just naming off a few. Wiz Khalifa, Staying Out All Night.
I don't know that one.
Busta Rhymes, Twerk It.
What's like his earliest credit? How far does this go?
His earliest credit is, it says here, 2005 Rhythm City Volume 1 Caught Up. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, so this is a younger gentleman, which is fine. Hotline Bling, like that was a huge song.
Oh, I take it back. He also has credits going back as far as 1998 for music videos. I was reading it, Saran.
Who did he work with in the 90s?
In the 90s, Noriega, Made Men, Onyx, Redman,
Oh man. Okay.
DMX, Chris Rock. No Sex in the Champagne Room was him. That's actually kind of amazing.
I'm more laughing at your enthusiasm over that track because
it's not a particularly good song, but it's a hilarious music video.
Yeah.
Director X has talent, and it's a lot of the scenes in Superfly. This movie is so high in its own supply because this movie cannot go more than about 10 minutes without a party scene, and it's slow motion, dancing girls, money. Money is so little of a concern in this movie that somebody in a party can literally throw a stack at the camera when everybody else is doing the same, and nobody cares whose money went where.
So the main antagonists in this film, in the new Superfly, is a rival gang known as the Snow Patrol, and based on that name,
chasing cars.
That's what got me. That is so fucking funny, and no review that I've seen so far finds the comedy in a gang sharing the same name with an alternative rock band.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the Snow Patrol, though, they dress in all white. Yep. They have like white cars,
white
guns,
white houses.
Yeah, white everything.
White furniture.
What's even more hilarious about it, that opening party scene where you meet the Snow Patrol, like they like a few of their guys in the Snow Patrol, their only job seems to be to hang out at parties and make it rain on women, like throwing money everywhere. And the funny thing is, these same characters in another scene of the film will like complain about how they're not making enough money. Stop wasting your fucking money making it rain. Then Jesus Christ,
they must have
blown $1 million in that scene alone.
This gang is hilarious. Like everything about them is great. One of the parts that it was only me and one other guy in the theater when we saw this, and what got one of the best laughs in the entire movie. And by the way, this other theater goer sitting 2 seats down was like a white guy in his 40s. So obviously in this theater, that movie totally missed its target demographic, unless it didn't. But they're all in a barber shop, which is also completely white. And one of the guys jumps up, is like, "Yeah, I'm the real deal." And he starts karate chopping the air, and just out of nowhere, it's loud enough to almost be a jump scare. There's a drive-by, and this guy just gets fucking drilled. Yeah. He's like dancing in the middle of the barbershop, and all of a sudden, like, blah, 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 it's like this 50 bullet holes out of nowhere.
Some awful CG, by the way.
Awful CG.
This movie, I will say, Director X has crafted a very he crafted a very entertaining movie, but it's also full of some technical flaws that cannot be forgiven. There is what might be the most awfully shot car chase in recent memory.
Yeah.
Shot almost entirely on extreme close-ups to the point where it feels like it's impossible to judge depth perception.
I didn't have that problem with it so much as it looked like it had been sped up in post. Like the first time I saw this technique was in The Count of Monte Cristo, I think, during the final sword fight in the field. It's carefully choreographed, but then they speed it up to like 1.5 to 2 times the speed, so it looks like they're just zipping around and they're moving a little bit too quickly, and the frames are a little bit jumpy.
Yeah,
and it had that same effect in this car chase. Mm-hmm. Where it just kind of looks like they were filming it at 30 miles per hour and then sped it up so it looked like they were going, a lot faster.
Yeah.
But that's really the only big technical issue I had. For some reason, the main character, Priest, he knows martial arts. Those scenes were pretty good.
Well, you shouldn't say for some reason. They actually do at least explain that the dealer that he works under is a martial arts expert and has been training him.
Well, yeah,
so
but
at least there's
the only
an explanation to it.
The only reason the dealer knows martial arts, his supplier, played by Michael K. Williams, is so that Priest can look cool doing martial arts. There's no reason that martial arts should be involved in this film at all, but it is, and it's fucking awesome.
Well, I mean, it was sort of involved in the first one too, to an extent.
Here's the thing. I'll try to keep this short, but back in the 1970s, the same theaters that would play blaxploitation films would get films from like Korea or Japan with terrible dubs and pair them up with blaxploitation films. So I think like the 70s kung fu movement and blaxploitation films are kind of like they intersect a lot, which is when you get films like The Last Dragon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. and you have to remember, there's a reason why the Wu-Tang Clan is all about like Asian
right
stuff.
Yeah,
it's because movies like that are things they grew up on. When they would go to the theater, you know, the theater in their area would be playing, you know, you'd get your grindhousey exploitation movies, but then you would also have movies like, you know, the Chamber of Shaolin or, you know, Shogun Assassin or something like that.
Yeah.
Or
another fun piece of trivia is that this movie came out on a Wednesday, which may be coincidental but also referential, is that hood movies and movies starring black actors in gangs back when those films had their heyday would release in the middle of the week because theater shootings with rival gangs would happen on the weekend. So they released in the middle of the week, so that would be less of a thing. A, with that, and B, so that other ethnic groups that would be interested in seeing the film wouldn't be worried about going on a weekend and being subjected to a shooting.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I have not heard that, but that's an intriguing release strategy.
Yeah, it is. The other thing that I really liked about this movie is what actually surprised me is that it is having exactly as much fun as you think you might have going to see it. Mm-hmm. It's very much in on its own joke. Like one of the things that made me laugh the hardest is Michael K. Williams looks at Priest and tells him that he has his Morris Day hair, and Priest says, "Excuse me, who the fuck is Morris Day?" Which is great because it's that he has Morris Day's hairdo, but it being a 2018 film, he doesn't know who Morris Day is.
And it makes a lot of sense too because the guy who plays Priest, Trevor Jackson, is 21 years old.
Yeah.
And
great performance, by the way.
Not many 21-year-olds know who Morris Day is.
Yeah.
Hell, people my age barely know who he is.
I think I did at 21, but you can thank Kevin Smith for that and Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back.
That's true. That sort of brought it back.
But I thought that was a very clever joke on a couple of different levels.
That you owe that to Kevin Smith?
Not to mention, this was I'm reviewing this movie, and the review will be up soon. But this is one of the easiest and most dangerous drinking games I've ever been able to write. You can take a drink every time somebody has a gun pulled on them. Do a shot every time a verbal reference is made to Priest's hair, because at least 8 different people say something about his hair.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else I put in there. There was every time money rains.
Oh God, Jesus, you die. That's almost as bad as the Who is John Galt drinking game from the Atlas Shrugged movies.
God. But yeah, the only other issue I took with it was that it kind of dips its toe. At first, I thought that was okay, and then upon reflection, I was like, maybe it's not quite as much of a positive thing. Is that it dips its toe into racial issues, but never really enough to make it feel like it's actually trying.
Right. Now, the first movie, the original Superfly, I think dealt with it a little bit better. I think part of the reason why it's not as effective is the concept behind Superfly is sort of a bygone concept. The hood movie, the gangster who's wanting to get out. Movies like that aren't really. It's sort of a. Let me put it this way: we live in an era where where African American centric films don't have to do the hood movie. The hood movie is sort of a it's gone underground. It's not the mainstream. In the 70s, that was the only thing they had.
Right.
That was all that Hollywood would put out.
And this isn't even a hood movie.
But
well, yes, it is. This movie takes place in New York and in the gangland of New York. It's not necessarily in the most Atlanta. I'm sorry. The first movie, the original Superfly's New York.
And the reason I say it's not a hood movie is because this is a deliberate choice by Director X to relocate the setting of the film into not a drug or hood hive of activity, but into the hip hop capital of America.
Which I understand, but the fact is that the movie's about gangbangers doing gangbanging shit, so that makes it a hood movie.
I do want to comment on this and just say, like, to Ken's credit, yes, like we have had just one example. Dear White People was a film. Now it's a fucking series on Netflix. Dope was kind of popular, and these are just films about people of color in regular ass everyday situations, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that yes, to remake Superfly in 2018, it is kind of like
however, that said, I enjoyed it for that archaic nature, that he found a way to modernize it in an entertaining way. Is it socially relevant, culturally relevant? Nah, not really. Is it entertaining? Yes, I had fun with it.
Yeah, well, the only reason I say the cultural thing is that towards the end there is an instance of white-on-black violence by a cop, and there's not really much said about it except that a white cop killed a black character, and the movie never really goes much further than that in terms of the struggle of the African-American individual as people, or as individuals and as a race, and how people feel about them. That's never really touched upon, except that a white cop kills a black character.
And then at the end, Priest gets to fist fight him.
Priest gets to beat the absolute shit out of him. That's the other thing that made it work a little bit more, but maybe not quite as much as it could have, is that it's a reversal of a white cop beating the hell out of a black person, as that the black guy gets to beat the hell out of the white cop. It's a reversal of that power dynamic.
Oh, I have a weird comparison to make here.
Well, before you do that, I do want to interject a bit in that the first Superfly movie actually it does this, and it similarly ends with Priest kind of getting the one up on the man, the white cops. But what he does instead, how he gets away with it, is he actually. And I'll just give this away because I doubt you guys are going to see the whole movie anytime soon. But basically, what he does is, so the policemen are going to try. First off, he beats the policeman up with karate, and then he hires contract killers that threaten to murder the threaten to murder the mayor and his entire family if anything happens to him.
Yeah, it's the whole finale of the movie, or the epilogue, I guess, is the early 2000s flavor of kind of like, oh, everything's wrapped up very, very neatly because of the script writer was smart enough to remember everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, this is okay because this guy paid that person, and this is okay because that happened, and it's convenient and weirdly satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
Anyway, yes, I had way more fun with Superfly than I thought I was going to. I got a huge kick out of it, and I can feel confident saying this is one of the most fun times I've had at the theater so far this year.
Awesome. Good to hear that.
I don't know if I go as far to say that it was, one of the most fun, but it was entertaining. I enjoyed it.
All right, Ken, okay. Can you pull up the director Steve Barron for me and specifically his music video work, because I do want to also talk about Steve Barron for a second. I know he directed the Billie Jean music video for Michael Jackson, so like he's kind of this iconic music video director, and he made the first he made the first live action Ninja Turtles movie, which is
he also directed Coneheads.
Did he direct Coneheads? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. An entertaining movie, I guess. Some people like really love Coneheads, and I don't know if it deserves it, but
it has its moments. I will say
it has its moments. Yes, it does. But the thing about Steve Barron and Ninja Turtles is that he transitioned from being a music video director to making this really solid action film with Jim Henson puppet, well, not puppet, but suit Ninja Turtles. And, you know, so did you pull him up?
Yeah.
I was curious about his other music videos, because I know he has done a lot of music videos.
Oh yeah, well he did "Take on Me" by Aha, which is a
oh
really
my
cool
God,
music video.
yeah, that's like a masterpiece of a music video.
He also directed the music video for the James Bond movie "The Living Daylights," which Aha also did the theme for.
Okay.
He did Bryan Adams' "Cuts Like a Knife," summer of '69.
Uh-huh.
David Bowie, "Underground as the World Falls Down." Dire Straits' "Money for Nothing."
Whoa! Shit!
Yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and read the names of the artists he's worked with to make this quicker. He's also worked with Def Leppard, Dolly Parton, Fleetwood Mac, let's see, Joe Jackson, Madonna, Michael Jackson, Nat King Cole, Paul McCartney.
Holy shit.
Nat King Cole died in the 60s. How? Oh, it's okay. Natalie Cole's Unforgettable cover, and they bring that where they cut him into it. Okay, I was gonna say
like a tear in my beer, Hank Williams situation.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
Toto Africa, that was him too.
Oh, he directed the video for Africa?
Yeah.
Steve Barron, man. Yeah, he directed the first Ninja Turtles movie, and it's so crazy to think that like that's where he came from.
This dude is really into James Bond shit. He also directed the music video for Your Eyes Only.
Nice. Yeah, Steve Barron he seems like a cool guy. I would want to sit down and have a chat with him.
Yeah, I would agree. That's really intriguing. He's Irish, apparently. That's interesting.
So what Incredibles 2 is next, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Incredibles 2, which I went into with a certain amount of trepidation because it's been, 14 years, and how are you going to repeat the success of the first movie?
Can I step in here for a second and say just as a kid that was obsessed with doodling and cartoons and animation and Pixar, like the first Toy Story coming out was a huge deal. And I was kind of underwhelmed by Incredibles when it came out, and I have never loved it. I like it, but I've never loved it. And I understand why people love it, especially like kind of the melancholy aspects of the original film, where you see what's Coach's name? The TV show.
Craig T. Nelson.
Craig T. Nelson.
Coach. Wow.
What's Coach's name? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why I was just never like in love with it. And I do like, I respect it and I like it. It's just I've never connected with it like that. So that I'm just saying that's a weird entry point for me, with having all these people like, oh, we've been demanding the sequel for years.
I felt the same way as you did for the sequel.
Okay. But that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's just like, and I've seen the movie, the original film, and I get it. Like it ends on a cliffhanger, but it's a jokey fucking cliffhanger. It's the same kind of like jokey cliffhanger from the original Back to the Future.
I really enjoy the first Incredibles. I think it's a really good movie. Would I put it on? A lot of people say it's Pixar's best movie. I don't think I'd go that far. I think it's one of their better movies from that time period.
Right.
But as far as best, nah, not quite. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it, and I think as far as superhero movies go, it was one of the first movies that made me give a shit about superhero movies. Not even the Spider-Man movies did that for me. So, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, I mean, I kind of enjoyed the first one. I didn't even bother watching the second one. I just wasn't interested enough. To this day, I have never seen the whole movie from beginning to end. I fell asleep the last time I tried to watch it.
I feel like you should give those movies another shot, but
I can't. Last time I tried to watch Spider-Man 2, it put me to sleep. Mm-hmm. That's all I have to say.
Okay. So this isn't about Spider-Man. This is about
Incredibles 2, not Spider-Man 2. So Incredibles 2. I enjoyed it. I dug it. Is it better than the first movie? No. I think it's pretty fair to say that this is not superior to the original movie. But as a sequel goes, I would say that it is a solid but unremarkable sequel.
I was mostly entertained but never enthralled. I would feel safe saying I was underwhelmed by the sequel.
I'm not going to say underwhelmed because, honestly, I went in with really low expectations because I'd heard some really scathing people talk about it beforehand. And I try to avoid reviews, but I couldn't avoid it. It was fucking everywhere. And I heard some people being really cynical about it, and I went in and, honestly, it worked for me. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's kind of like, what movie did we talk about last week where you and I had opposite expectations and experiences with a movie? Because I think we had the exact same inverse experience, because I didn't see any reviews for it. All I knew about was the Rotten Tomatoes score was like 92%. I knew it was the highest opening weekend gross for an animated film ever. I heard that everybody loved it, and I was like, okay, it'll probably be pretty good. And I went in and I was like, it's fine, I guess.
What highest grossing debut for an animated film?
Yeah. Like 180 million or something like that?
Yes. Yeah, the movie that we were different on was Hereditary, wasn't it?
Yes. I think you went in with no expectations and no, it was something else. Anyway, you went in with some kind of expectations and enjoyed yourself, and I went in with none and didn't, or something. It doesn't really matter, but it's the same type of situation where you and I went in with opposite expectations and had different experiences in terms of enjoyment.
Oh, Hotel Artemis.
Yes, that's what it was. Because I expected to have a lot of fun with it and didn't. You expected to have no fun and did. With The Incredibles 2, you expected to hate it and didn't. I expected to really enjoy it and did not. So I think the problem that I have with this movie is that it never reaches an emotional or action high. Like, the climax is not a climax. It's kind of like it's the end of the movie and there's some action, but there's never really this heightened sense of danger or tension like there was in the first movie.
I will say something here as far as action. The least interesting aspect of superhero movies to me is the action. I don't give a fuck about the action in superhero movies because there are zero stakes. It's a superhero movie. The superheroes are going to be okay. That's it. Unless the superhero movie makes it clear that these people could die at any minute, I don't give a fuck about the action. All I care about is the character development, and I think this movie did deliver on that.
So the action stuff in the first Incredibles is what made that movie so interesting. And I said this in my trailer reviews, that when I watched the movie as a kid, it wasn't really quite as obvious to me that this is a movie about adults trying to murder children and their parents. And there are high stakes in the first Incredibles, like the plane sequence where the missiles are racing towards their plane and Violet's trying to use her powers. That is an incredibly tense scene. And nothing in the Incredibles 2 came anywhere close to that level of tension.
It was very incredibly intense.
Yes. No pun intended, but it was.
No. I got it. And I agree with you. The stakes are certainly higher. The stakes in Incredibles 2 are, the supers, are they going to be outlawed again or not? That's the stakes.
So apparently a big part of this movie felt kind of scattershot to me, and part of that is due to the fact that 2 years ago, Disney switched the release dates for Toy Story 4 and Incredibles 2. And they were basically like, hey, Brad Bird, surprise, your movie's going to be coming out a year earlier. You better finish it up fast. And so Brad Bird had to scrap a couple of things from his movie, which makes sense in hindsight, because I learned this after I watched it, but there were a few elements of it that didn't feel like they were quite finished.
I will say one of the things that isn't quite finished is the establishment of the main villain of the movie. Without going into any twist, because I think, you know, this is a movie you should go into. Bill Leon, you should not have it spoiled on you if it.
It's not a spoiler though.
Yeah, you'll call it really early in the movie. The one thing I will say, I am glad that they didn't do an extra twist and make Bob Odenkirk's character also a villain.
But one thing I love about Bob Odenkirk's character is that you can look at him and be like, that is Bob Odenkirk. That is 100%, like, the way he moves, the way he looks is 100% Bob Odenkirk. Absolutely.
And I think he played that character wonderfully. I love that he's sort of a 180 on Buddy from the first Incredibles, in that he's a super fan of superheroes. He's totally into them. But whereas Buddy went the, you know, angry, brooding villain route when he got, when he got told off that he couldn't be a villain himself, Odenkirk's character knows that he's never going to be a super, but he just loves superheroes. He is a fanboy, and it's like Bob Odenkirk is the aging 50-year-old fanboy who still has that child in him, and I enjoyed that. That was really fun.
He was good, but it had the opposite effect of the other villain had the exact same motives almost as Buddy from the first movie.
Yeah, that was a problem.
I hate superheroes.
Yeah, the actual villain was, you'll call it early, and it's not particularly that interesting.
It's in the fucking name.
I just survived on that because I thought Odenkirk, because he was sort of a companion to that. I think he was really. He saved that aspect of the film. I also liked the conceit of the conceit of the screenslaver, the villain who's able to hypnotize people, and the idea of him turning superheroes against people and you know, bowing them to his will. That did enhance the stakes a little bit, because you had that sequence in which the kids realized that their own parents were trying to kill them. That was kind of fucked up.
It was, yeah, for the 5 seconds that it lasted.
Yeah, I mean, they end it quick, but it's, you know, it's a kids' movie. Ultimately, they can't scare kids too much. That's Disney's line of thinking.
Another thing where the first Incredibles felt a lot more daring. The first Incredibles was back when Pixar was doing the movies, not Pixar owned by Disney. This movie feels afraid to get too far into adult territory, even though there are a couple surprising uses of hell and damn. And there's drinking, there's alcohol in this movie, which, you know, again, it's the thematic elements of like, oh, the parents are going to kill the kids. That's kind of scary. But, well, you know, as soon as you had time to think about how that's scary, it's not scary anymore because it's over. The first movie had this real sense of peril. It showed a dead fucking body. It's, you know, everything felt more real and scary in the first one. And this one just felt neutered.
I will say a few other things I enjoyed. I enjoyed the when they introduced the other kind of the kind of rogues gallery of superheroes. There were some pretty unique ones. The one that made me laugh the most was Reflux, the elderly superhero.
That one was funny.
His power was super. Like, it was puking lava, basically.
I can't remember what his line was. It was like, is it ailment or superpower? You choose.
Yeah.
That was funny. That was a total Brad Bird line that I really liked.
And then there was the one dude, I forget his superhero's name, but his power was just he crushes shit.
Yeah.
And it made me think of all things, it made me think of the kids in the hall, the Crusher.
Well, then at one point he's asked to like uncrunch something, and his reaction is basically, "Why the hell would somebody ask me to do that?"
Yeah, what his power is to crush things. How do you uncrunch?
He's like, "Oh, you crunch a person, you uncrunch them. How do you do that?" Like that was really funny.
That's good stuff.
And the other thing that worked really well for me was the entire first 2 acts of the film are basically like Craig T. Nelson gets to play Mr. Mom, and him dealing with Jack made for some hilarious sequences because, dealing with all of the ridiculousness of this baby who is kind of the superhero version of a special needs baby. The special needs of Jack being body armor, flameproof vest, laserproof paneling.
And I think that Jack and his specific arc was 2 of the most wanting parts of the film in terms of the raccoon fight not being a running joke and Edna not being in the movie more. Like, I don't know what other function Edna would serve in the film, but Edna Mode is such a wonderful character.
Oh yeah,
that the few minutes she's in it were probably the best scene in the movie for me, and I would love to see more of her. And I hope if they make an Incredibles 3, she'll have more involvement with the Incredibles' lives because she's just fantastic as a character.
Oh yeah, that sequence was great, and the raccoon thing, yeah, they should have brought that back. That would have been nice. And this is a movie, if anything, this is a movie that needed to have a post-credit moment with the raccoon or something. There are no post-credit sequences in this.
Right. I feel like I'm being too harsh on Brad Bird in Incredibles 2, but as much as I love Brad Bird and I hated Tomorrowland, God bless him, I think Brad Bird's a great director, and I think that knowing in retrospect that Disney forced him to escalate the production schedule of this movie, I can see it. I can. Something didn't quite feel right when I was watching it, and knowing that now is like, that's exactly it. He didn't get enough time to do what he wanted to do with the movie. It felt rushed. It was incomplete in terms of a script and story and theme. What worked the best felt like stuff that was in there from day one, from his planning stages.
Yeah, it's uneven, but overall, I enjoyed it, and I would certainly see it again. I think that this is the kind of movie that, while it's flawed, there's enough in it that I could put it on, if it comes to streaming and kick back and enjoy it.
I wish they didn't use the strobe effect for the hypnotizing sequences.
Okay, yeah, that strobe effect, it's worth noting that this movie, Disney's kind of scrambling to make sure every theater posts a seizure warning, because this movie has a couple scenes in it which literally will give you a seizure if you are prone to photosensitive seizures. I'm not prone to them, but I'm certainly familiar with what causes them because I've known someone who has gone through it. And when that sequence happened, I'm like, Disney okayed this?
Yeah, and somebody online was saying like, "Oh, Disney knows which frequencies cause seizures, and they obviously wouldn't do that for this movie." And the response to that person was like, "That's stupid because different people respond differently."
Oh, yeah.
I don't know which side is true, but I know I don't think I get seizures from that stuff, but I definitely had to look away because when it comes to those flashing lights, I get a little, I don't know, it feels weird.
It brings me back to the when Pokemon, there was that warning. It came out when like the Pokemon cartoon show had some seizure warnings, and I'm trying to remember, was it Simpsons that had a parody like Japanese seizing robots?
Yeah,
and it was yes, it was the Simpsons.
Okay, yeah, and it's just, you got to be careful with that shit because seizures are there's no joking. They can fuck you up.
Well, why not just have it's got like a checkerboard pattern on the screen? Why not just have that revolving? And then why have an entire fight sequence in an enclosed room with lights? That was the one that fucked me up the worst. Is that this whole room, and everybody's like, "Oh, that effect was so cool for the visuals. Like it looks all of a sudden more colorful and 2D."
Here's the thing: I thought it was cool too, but I also knew that was a problem. They shouldn't have done it.
And I wish I could have seen what it looked like because I couldn't. I had to cover my eyes, and I wish I could have seen how cool that looked because it was a bad choice for a visual motif.
Yeah, it was a bad choice because there's a great proportion of the population who can't watch that shit. I personally thought it was a really neat visual effect, but it's the kind of visual effect that really you shouldn't force on people.
It's the kind of visual effect that's so neat to give some people seizures.
Yes, exactly. It's so awesome that it could kill you potentially. All right, so I think we've kind of covered Incredibles 2. Now, Hawk, you've got a tall order here. You've got to tell us about Gotti.
Yes. So just to preface this, Gotti is a movie about, of course, the mobster. This has been, over the years, gone through 4 directors, a handful of actors, and 44 producers.
Jesus H. Christ.
How many writers? How many rewrites on the script?
I don't know, a lot. And from what this movie ends up, they're like, fuck it, use all of it. I don't care anymore. Just get this movie made. This movie has no plot at all. But first, I want to back up a little bit. It starts out with, it's got John Travolta as Gotti. He's looking out over a green screen New York harbor, and he turns around. He's like, let me tell you something. New York is the best fucking city in the world. My city. And he's just narrating, and he's,
Is this John Gotti or is this Trump?
It's John Gotti. And it's John Travolta's accent for this movie. A couple reviews said, you know what, the movie's bad, but John Travolta's good. He's not good. His accent just sounds like somebody was like, talk like a mobster. And he's like, okay, got it. Let's go. Let's roll. And the movie just bounces between these bullet points of John Gotti's life. It never spends more than 5 minutes per event. So there are characters that appear and disappear. There's just this revolving door. At first, I thought, like, am I just not following this movie? Am I so bored that I'm not paying enough attention? But every review confirms this, is that characters just come and go as if they walking in and walking out. There's one guy referenced here, and then this guy referenced there, and then there's a scene where one character is talking about how if you make a wrong step, it's going to kill you, and the cops will get you, or some of the mobster will kill you. And the next scene, that character is dead from cancer. And then there are 2 scenes in this movie that get more than between 2 and 5 minutes of actual attention. One is the death of Gotti's 12-year-old son. He got hit by a car. Mm-hmm. And the other is Gotti's infamous hit on the current mob boss of his family so that he could take over the family. And other than that, nothing else in this movie is given any sort of attention. It just kind of just waltzes through all these different... Someone had a checklist of things in a history book, the chapter about Gotti, and just like, okay, we're going to do these 15 things and call it good. And it just bounces between them. Not only that, you have the opening scene where there's Gotti in his prime talking to the camera and narrating. Then it's really, really old Gotti with cancer and really shitty John Travolta old person makeup talking to his son in prison. Then it's back to Gotti as a young mob underboss. Then it's a few years forward as Gotti, a little bit older. Then it's back to Gotti being super old in prison. Then back to him being young again. It races between times and events and all kinds of shit. And it's just so fucking unfocused and hard to follow. And all these characters they have play no stake in anything. By the end of the movie, you don't remember who did what. And that's the biggest problem, is that with all the work that's gone into this movie and all the directors and writers and producers, it shows. It looks like everybody had a part in making this movie. You guys know who directed this, right?
Kevin Connolly.
Yeah, Kevin Connolly of Entourage.
Yeah. I mean, what other directors had it?
Yeah. There are moments that are really funny in this movie. Like, one of my favorites is there's a shot of a guy helping another guy down, this really old character down the street. He's like sick, he's dying, whatever. And then about 10 minutes later, there's another shot of these 2 guys walking on the street, and they're a little bit closer to the camera. And then 10 minutes later, there's another shot of them climbing up some stairs in the same camera placement and framing, which the movie apparently is implying that it's taken the whole film for them to walk about 20 feet down the sidewalk. I didn't even get that. Like, I had no idea what they were going for, but it looked really, really stupid. I'm trying to think of what else there is. Like, there's just so much to unpack. The New York Post called Gotti the worst mob movie of all time, and they were one of a handful of critics on Rotten Tomatoes, none of which gave this movie a positive review.
Have they seen the Christopher Lambert movie, The Sicilian, though?
Probably. This is worse than The Sicilian.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
You've seen The Sicilian? Be honest here. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
And you think that this is worse? Because I find it so hard to believe that you could possibly make a worse mob movie than The Sicilian.
Now, I saw The Sicilian, I believe, around the time I saw Highlander and Mortal Kombat. So I was kind of on a Christopher Lambert high.
Okay.
So that might have artificially inflated my opinion of the film. I don't remember. I mean, this was years ago. I don't remember hating it.
All right. Well, I mean,
but I saw that movie before I was kind of into the critical mindset.
It's the movie that proves that Michael Cimino had truly lost his way. But
well, this one reinforces that John Travolta has lost his way.
If he ever had a way to follow, really.
He had a way in Face Off.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that movie succeeds more on Nicolas Cage terms, but I will say Travolta's
Nicolas Cage and John Woo
impersonation was funny.
Yes.
But Nicolas Cage's Travolta was funnier.
Yeah. I mean, you can't just act like Nicolas Cage and outdo Nicolas Cage.
I want to take his face off.
Face Off is a better movie than Gotti. I mean, what else is there to say about Gotti? I mean, again, it's all a jumble in my head at this point. I had notes, and I've gone through some of them, and I still don't feel like I've talked about all of it. It's just John Travolta's performance is so strange. Oh, it also has the villain from The Devil's Candy plays a role in this, which was kind of nice to see because I can't remember what his name is now.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. He's a character actor. He's in a lot of stuff.
He's in a lot of stuff. He was probably the best performance in this movie. But again, it's kind of testament to how this movie has no idea what it's doing. Like, there's a scene where this character played by this actor, he has appeared in a wiretapping tape talking about this and that, and he gets in a lot of trouble. And then it takes another 4 scenes before you see the outcome of that, which is basically Gotti outlaws him from the family. And then the next scene's like, well, he died of cancer, like everybody else in the movie. Everybody fucking dies of cancer in this movie. And then Gotti's his monologue. He's like, if you ask me, I think he died of a broken heart because he's sad that he got kicked out of the family. Yeah. Yeah, that's the biggest problem is the plot makes no sense. Nothing happens in this movie that is even remotely easy to follow. There are some things that are kind of funny with the performances. Kelly Preston's performance as Gotti's wife is fucking awful. Every performance in this movie is really awful, especially his son, who just kind of yells a lot. And they use the same actor, just like they do with John Gotti, but obviously you can use a lot of makeup for Travolta to age him down and age him up, but the actor playing his son just stays the same age the entire movie. I mean, what else do you guys want to know about Gotti? It's just, oh my God. The soundtrack.
Okay.
The soundtrack is entirely composed and recorded by Pitbull.
Excuse me?
Oh my goodness. Pitbull does the soundtrack for this movie, and it is. I cannot believe I forgot about that until this moment. It is colossally bad. So, like, the opening sequence shows like shots of the real life Gotti from like news footage and stuff, and you get like this kind of dramatic violin, like like mob music and violin, The Godfather, that kind of thing, and all of a sudden just goes bum bum bum, wake up, motherfuckers, and it's like Pitbull just rapping. about the mob life, and it's so bad and so fascinating. Like the Gotti soundtrack is on Spotify, and I encourage you to go check it out because it is one of the most interesting disasters I've ever heard in a film. I cannot think of a soundtrack that was a bigger misfire than this.
Yeah, I look forward to glancing that.
And then, of course, the film ends with real-life testimonials from people who idolized John Gotti.
Oh my God.
It's worth noting that throughout the film, it's sprinkled with like these court cases and things where Gotti cleverly eluded the law and got exonerated for one reason or another. And he apparently became some kind of folk hero.
Yeah, I mean, gangsters tend to be folk heroes in the eyes of other gangsters and people who want to be gangsters.
These are like full-on civilians, but like, yeah, he was a great guy. And people attended his funeral, and there's footage.
The other thing with gangsters, as far as the folk hero aspect that is worth noting, a lot of gangsters become popular by basically like doing shit for the poor. Like,
right.
One thing that's very common is like passing out things like turkeys at Christmas to people who can't afford them, stuff like that.
Yeah, and then there's a scene where Gotti's son gets, inducted into the family, and he's given the list of rules like, never endanger civilians, so on and so forth. But it's really the only instance in which this mob is portrayed as something that has the goodwill of the people in mind.
Mm-hmm.
It functions far more as a John Travolta vanity piece, which is interesting considering I don't believe Travolta was originally the main actor for the film. Like way back in the day, this is going to be directed by Barry Levinson and starring I can't even remember. It's gone through a lot of production issues, and it's now. I was going to mention this earlier. It's funny. This was actually distributed by MoviePass through their MoviePass Ventures program, which they did for American Animals as well, which is funny considering the Grand Canyon of difference in between the quality of the films. But MoviePass has weaponized the Rotten Tomatoes critic and audience scores for this movie. They've changed the marketing now where it's like critics or the audiences loved Gotti.
That's I was going to bring that up. The Twitter account for this film is saying things like that, right?
Yeah, audiences loved it, but critics put out a hit.
Yeah,
and then they just put out this classic line, which is like, "So who do you trust, yourself or a troll behind a keyboard?" Like they had to go that far. They didn't even have to say yourself or critics that want to hate the movie. They had to say a troll behind I am a troll behind a keyboard as a result of hating this movie.
Right.
Yeah. Well, if you hate something that sucks, then it means that you're a troll.
Yeah, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how I want to respond to that ad besides just going the obvious route and saying this is the biggest shit-sucking piece of ass I've seen in my entire career of, not really, but it is bad. This is probably the worst movie of the year so far, and I have seen Tyler Perry's Acrimony and Woody the Woodpecker.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's amazing that it is at a certain point they weren't just like, you know what, we're done. Shut it down. We'll take the loss. I believe that Lionsgate was going to just put this direct to video, and then Travolta and the director were like, no, it's good enough to put in theaters. Somebody buy us. And then MoviePass and like 2 other companies bought it for distribution. There's like 6 or 7 different credits for studios at the beginning of the movie.
That is ludicrous.
Yes, it's it's a bad movie. And I recommend seeing it because it sucks. If you hate yourself, go see Gotti.
Well, that's a good note to end on. Well,
I want to watch it.
I if I have an opportunity to see it, I think I'll go see it too.
Yep.
Gotti deserves a 6-pack of concrete tied to its legs in the river.
Attack of the Gods.
All right. Well, we will see you next week. We're going to have Jurassic World.
If we see it.
Fallen Kingdom.
If we see it.
Yeah.
I just...
Maybe let's just not. Let's see Won't You Be My Neighbor instead.